Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Michael, good morning. Welcome to Coaching Call. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Sifu. How are you?
Exceptional. Getting better every day, my friend.
Glad to hear it. I love it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love the fact that you're helping our youth thrive mentally. It's so important because every time I look at a little kid, I say, you're my future. You're my future. So I want to make sure you get everything you need so that I can have, a great future.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to keep strengthening them, right, in the right way.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. When you look at them, you see that sort of that innocence, that sort of moldability of, right, like where are these young people going to go? And I think connecting that to my work, I think the world we live in, I don't necessarily know that everybody looks at it that way, right? We want something from little people. We look at them like little adults. We don't look at them about like future adults. Like, what are we trying to do to develop them into adults versus these expectations of, hey, you're supposed to be a certain way at a much earlier age than really is realistic.
Right. Yeah. So for me, because I also teach youngsters, and I say it in front of the parents. I said, listen, let's make sure we take care of your kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just looking at them as kids. I'm looking at them as our future. I said to the parents, they're your future. And the parents go, wow, I never saw it that way. And I'm like, so let's be on the same team. Let's work together. Let's make them incredible. Right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a funny story that kind of relates to that. So the other day, a few days ago, I had a call with a prospective client, a mother. I was talking to her about her son, who she's interested in using me for coaching. And I was telling her about, like, just kind of generally who I work with, not obviously naming names, but I was like, oh yeah, I have kids at these schools. And then I said, oh, well, my kids are at this school, right? So in one instance, I was referring to my clients as my kids. And one instance, I was referring to my kids as my kids. And she's like, wow, you have a lot of kids. And I'm like, oh, sorry. No. But I do feel like they're all my kids, right? Like when a parent entrusts me to help their child, whether they're 12, 13, 18, 22, whatever, right? Like, I want them to feel like they're being, like, I'm taking care of their child like it was my own. And I don't necessarily know that always is the case.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting. I have one of my clients who's a state trooper now, but his parents brought him to me when he was 3, and I told him, no, he's not ready. I've taken other 3-year-olds, but he was not ready. So I spoke with the parents for a little while, and when you kind of turn somebody away, you never ever expect them to come back. One day I see them walk in, the kids. So the dad goes, he's ready now. He's 10. So this kid came in, he was more focused. I was like, absolutely, I'll take him. And he trained with me right till before he had to leave. He went upstate. I'm in New York, right? So I'm in Long Island. He went north of us, so it's too far for him to come back. But he was here till he had to hit the academy. And he said, his dad's like, thank you. You've created what I know him to be an incredible human being. He looks out after other people. He helps other people. This is why, I'm so blessed to have come back to you guys after you turning us down.
Yeah.
we still keep that connection going, which is strong, right?
Yeah, and I think that example is interesting, and I would say that I love those experiences when they happen to me. But I think for me, I don't always realize the impact that I'm having in that moment because you
Mm.
don't always get that immediate feedback, right? And then down the line somewhere, it comes back to you like, hey, I still think about these things we talked about, or was really benefited from the lessons that you shared with me, or the information that you shared with me. And that's really what it's all about for me as well, being of service to people, right? Like
Yeah.
getting into this coaching line of work, whatever type of coaching you do, is really about serving others. It's not about anything more than that, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had clients who were kids when they started, and now they're bringing their kids to me. So
Amazing.
you know what it is when you do the right thing for people. But I wanna talk about your childhood.
Mm.
Let's go back. Where were you born? And before the age of 10, who were your biggest influencers?
Wow. Well, the easy question is I was born on Long Island, in Valley Stream, Long
Yes.
Island. As a matter of fact, 50 years ago today's my birthday.
Happy
So
birthday. What? You're spending it with me?
yeah.
I am blessed. I am blessed. Thank you for spending the time with me. Happy
Yes, yes,
birthday.
it
Happy
is my
birthday.
thank you. Yeah, I thought this would be a good way to celebrate it. So the second part of the question is really interesting,
Mhm.
because my childhood was, I would think, looking back on it, less than ideal. I think a lot of people would answer that question to say, maybe it was their father, or maybe it was a coach. I love my father, but I didn't really look up to him in that way, and I didn't have the kind of relationship I really wanted to have with him when I was younger than 10. I had other male family members that I looked up to, which in retrospect, they had their own challenges. But at the time, I really sort of gravitated to them because I just felt I was seen by them, right? Like they really saw me for who I was, and they loved me. They didn't judge me, and they wanted to spend time with me and be a part of my life. So, I struggle. Happy birthday. That's a good question. It's a hard one to answer because I really, I think I've struggled for those kinds of role models in my life, quite frankly.
I gotta tell you, it's not necessarily. I don't always see people who influence me as role models.
Mm.
Sometimes I see it's people who've hurt me. They've helped shape me because they've taught me so many lessons of, hey, I don't want to be like them.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll go with that because if you frame it that way, then
Mhm,
yes, I would say that my father definitely did. Right. Because I looked at him as a young child and I said, like, hey, I don't really want to be this type of father
mhm,
when I grow up. And I'd like to think, hopefully my children would agree, and I think they would, that I'm there for them, and not just in a traditional providing way, but in an emotional way. They could talk to me and I support them. And those are the things I wanted from my father, which I didn't necessarily get. So in that vein, absolutely, right. Influenced by the things I wanted to learn from to do differently.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people, when I do ask that question, they think like, who is the most positive?
Yes. Well,
And,
it's the
and
first thing I
sometimes,
thought.
yeah, of course, and that's natural, right, for all of us. That's a natural takeaway. But when we think about who influenced you, listen, I know friends of mine who their biggest influencers were gang members
Mhm.
because they're the ones that they didn't get what they needed at home, and it was the gang that they got involved with who took care of them.
Mhm.
So who influences you is not always the positive, right?
Yeah.
One of my friends actually went to jail for it, and in jail, he met a person who influenced him and said, "You still are young." I think he was 18 when he went to jail. He goes, "You're not here for long.
Mhm.
I never want to see you again." I think the guy was a lifer. He goes,
Mhm.
"Don't throw away your life like I did. Do these things." And he helped them in jail.
Yeah.
So he turned his life around because the gentleman that was in jail helped him
Mhm.
understand this is not the life you want to continue with. And when he got out, he was no longer in the gangs. He didn't associate. He did all these different things. So it's important to understand that we never know who is going to impact your life, whether it's a positive or negative, and how or not. Because the gang members were there for him, right? They were supporting
Right.
him. Of course, they asked him to do the wrong things, right?
Right.
Go sell drugs, go, all these things, steal and so forth.
Yeah.
But when he got to a place that he thought he was done for, there was one person in there that spoke to him and helped him. And now he's leading other people. He's a big advocate in helping youngsters, which I love that he does that now, because he realized his mistake, but he didn't continue making it. So yes, I'm sorry I went off the deep end there.
No, that's great. But and I'll just sort of I'll share in that vein. Like, I was an athlete through high school. It was the most important thing in my life, the biggest part of who I was, my identity. And one of the things that inspired me to get into the line of work that I do with young athletes is I told myself that I wanted to be the person that I didn't have, right? Growing up, right? I struggled with the mental and emotional elements of my sport and didn't really have the support that I wanted from the people around me. And I tried to bear that burden very much on my own, which is really difficult. And fast forward to today, like, I know how hard it can be, but now we live in a different world. We got social media, we've got expectations. Youth sport is, just this massive money-making industry machine. And the pressure that goes on to a kid is much greater. And then there's still that internal pressure of, hey, I just want to be really good at this thing that I love. So, like, not having someone to sort of diffuse that and learn the skills and tools that can help you have a better experience that's what I wanted to be, because I could have really used that when I was a teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving down the line, you wish your dad would have been there for you. And thank you for being, so honest and candid with that. My dad was similar to yours, I believe. But when you started to have a positive influence, who was that? Was it a coach? Was it a teacher? An aunt, an uncle? Who was that for you? And it doesn't have to be in your teens. It could be like maybe in your 30s, whatever it is, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, I'll share this. I would say that, when I turned 37, about 10, 12, 13 years ago, I actually entered a recovery program. And that was really the first time in my life where I had really strong and positive male role models who I looked up to, who were vulnerable and were addressing their shortcomings and were talking about the problems in their lives and trying to be better people for themselves and others. It really wasn't until I got to that point in my life at 37 that I started to see that there's this whole other world of people out there who are willing to sort of be vulnerable and to share their experience and to share, what they've learned. And similar to the story you were telling about, the person, that went to prison, right? The people who want to share the mistakes, who want to share the failure with other people so they can be better. Like, that really inspired me. And that was a big part of my journey into the field that I'm in now. Cause it's not my first career. It's my second career.
Tell us, that was a powerful message you just told us. And people, let's unwrap that a little bit, that you don't know when the right people are going to step into your life. And it could be at any age. I mean, you could be, let's say you didn't have it, but maybe tomorrow you find somebody, right? So it's never too late and one of the things that I was watching a show, and somebody, I think it was the show Tracker, right? I sit with my fiance, and we just, when we have lunch, we say, let's watch something, or we'll watch something. And we'll just watch a show, turn it off, and that's it, right? We don't even subscribe to television. We just it's something that we download and we watch it, right? because I don't want to spend my time watching television. I want to spend my life living. So
Mhm.
I'm different that way. And so one of the things at the end of the shows, somebody was down because one of their family members committed a crime. And then they're like, "Oh, I hate people." He goes, "Don't give up on people.
Mhm.
There's good ones out there." So it was in that context that he
Mhm.
spoke. And I was like, "Ah, that's a great message," especially at the end of the show. It's so important for all of us to understand that the time may not be right for that
Mhm.
incredible person to step into our light and
Yes.
shine upon us, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly had those experiences at different points in my life, especially later in life, and maybe because I needed it.
Mm,
Maybe I knew better, or maybe I was just ready, like it's unclear, right? Why anybody there's always a reason, but it's unclear why anybody comes into our lives and has that impact, right? And I think a lot of times it has to do with the motivation from my end to go, hey, I really need this. I'm looking for it, right? If I'm not looking for it, it's hard to find.
yeah, yeah. I um I belong to a group, and maybe I'll connect you with the gentleman. It's called the He-Man Group, and it's just guys. It's in prayer.
Mhm.
So we come together, and he's got prayer night every Monday night, and so
Mhm.
forth, or every other Monday. Something I'm not sure. I can't make it, so I'm bummed out for that. But it's everybody coming together and just uniting as men.
Mhm.
I'll connect you with Oliver, Dr. Oliver, and it's such a great community when you can come with together with like-minded people
Mhm.
who, who can understand that. Hey, you know what? Nobody's perfect,
Yeah.
right? Nobody's perfect. And out there, anybody listening, if you ever meet a perfect person, reach me. I will drop everything. I want to meet them.
Mhm.
Right? I want to meet them. But there is no one that I've ever seen in my life who's perfect. We all have flaws. We all make mistakes. So growing up, it took you 37 years where you went through recovery. And so now that opens up another can of worms for us. Talk to us about what you were recovering from. Gambling. What was it?
Yeah, gambling. Yeah, that was my
Hit it on the nose, huh?
you hit it right on the nose. Yeah, gambling was something that actually, if you kind of rewind the conversation a little bit, it's something I started to do at a very young age, um, because of the environment that I was in, because I was really into sports, and so sports and gambling now we know is
Hmm.
massive, massive industry. But even back then, before it was legalized and in our face, that was something that I just gravitated to, and so from the time I was probably, 12 years old, 13 years old, up through high school, college, and then into adulthood, gambling was something I always did. And then it just progressed and progressed to a point where I couldn't sustain it anymore. And I found myself into a 12-step program to recover from that compulsive behavior, and was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. In that some of those things that you're describing, you just described about like-minded people and spirituality and vulnerability and not being perfect and acknowledging those things. Those are all things that I first became exposed to in my life. Whereas for the first 37 years, it was me, 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 right? I can fix this problem. I've got this under control. Like, I'll do it myself. I don't need anybody's help. Right. And I think that that's a function of the first 37 years of my life and the way I grew up and all those things. But ultimately, I said, I can't do this anymore alone. And then I started to see the way that works, that other side of like, hey, I don't have to do this alone. I can get help from other people. I can acknowledge that I'm not perfect, and then I can seek out support. That was really a huge thing for me. Now, have I been perfect in the last 13 years? Absolutely not. But I've
Hmm.
been better. And I certainly haven't gambled in 13 years, but it's more just the knowledge for myself that when I'm stuck in a place of self, ego, 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 I need to get out of that and either be of service to somebody else,
Mhm.
or look for that service for myself, versus I'm going to figure this out on my own, which is something I still struggle with today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I thank you for that also, because we need to remember that every day we need to keep improving, right? Every day.
Mhm.
That's why when you asked me earlier, how am I doing? I said exceptional and getting better, because I need to understand that I need to improve. I
Mhm.
need to look at all my mistakes, all my flaws, and keep correcting and keep correcting.
Mhm.
It's like driving a plane, right? Or piloting a plane. You can't just put it on autopilot and hope to land, because it's not gonna it's not gonna do it right. So we need to autocorrect on a daily basis, I believe. And for me, it's daily, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, right? Um, because if you believe in God and so forth, we're all sinners, right? And so it's about when we sin, what did we learn? How do we come out of it? How do we cleanse
Mhm.
ourselves? Um, it's interesting, because I never thought gambling was your addiction, and there it is, right?
There it
But
is.
it's so, and I'm going to ask you a question based on that addiction. How do you feel now that it's become legal in so many places, where more and more people are becoming addicted
Mhm.
to that? Because addiction is simple. People can be addicted to cookies. People can be addicted to um, now marijuana is legal. Oh my gosh. And it's sometimes I'm driving, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody's smoking in that car. And
Yeah.
it's horrible, because now we've gone away from the values that we had earlier, where we shouldn't do these things, but now we're like, it's okay to do it.
Yeah.
It's not.
So, I think from my own experience, my view is I adopted the belief in recovery that I couldn't gamble like another person, like a normal person, right? So when I say that, I say, hey, listen, there's plenty of people out there who can engage in gambling behavior, right? And not develop a problem the way that I did, right? So, like, I don't look at what's going on now and go, oh my God, everyone's going to turn into a problem gambler. Will there be more? Yes, I believe there will be more. And I think there's probably somewhere data out there to support that idea.
Right.
However, I don't viscerally react to it and go, um, like, this is terrible. It doesn't make me angry or whatever. It makes me sad
Right.
because I know what it's like to go through that. And people, when I was going through it, and I had the experience for many, many years of being a gambler and denying the fact that I I thought I could control it. I thought I didn't have a problem. I think what makes me sad is that there are people out there who are going through that process, and they're going to try to do it on their own, and they're going to think it's okay, and they're
Mhm.
going to be like, "Oh, I'll figure this out, or I'll win my money back or whatever." That part, like at the individual level, that makes me sad that there's more people who
Mhm.
think it's normal, and they're going to find out that it's not, that it can really kill your spirit as a person because you become obsessed with this behavior. And to your point, like you said before about watching TV as an example, when I was gambling, it wasn't about money as much as it was about escaping from reality, escaping
Mhm.
from my life. It was a way to escape my problems, and it just made me feel better, made me help me numb out, to put it
Right.
another way, right? Just like someone smokes marijuana or somebody drinks or somebody eats or whatever, they do it as a way to sort of self-soothe, right? To, like,
Mhm.
escape from that reality of the pain or whatever feeling it is that they're feeling. I think that that's also part of the thing that makes me sad as well. Looking at the world, is people are just they're so intent on finding the things that don't allow them to feel, right?
Mm.
They don't want to feel the negative stuff. So what's that thing that's going to not let me feel
Yeah.
a behavior in a lot of cases, right? So, like watching it makes me sad, and it does. I look at it sometimes and I go, "This is crazy." Like, somebody has to sort of step in here and say, like, these advertisements and promotions and all these things are a little bit much, but business is business, and government is government, and all those things will work themselves out. But I really more like feel sad for the individuals who get involved and will find their way to the place that I got to.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's um it's very interesting back in the day when cigarette ads were everywhere.
Yep.
And now when they deemed it truly unhealthy, they stopped letting them advertise. And then now vaping was the other big major thing. And so many people have gotten terrible effects from it, that I'm not seeing any vaping ads, which is a good thing as well. You still see liquor ads. You're not seeing necessarily marijuana ads, but you know they're out there. They're going, like a great alternative or whatever. And you're right, because there is a lot of events that people are seeing these ads about. We'll give you $500 on your best first
Yes.
bet.
Yes.
And it's like pull you in.
Exactly.
Come on. We'll add. If you bet $100, we'll add to the 100. So you'll now be betting for 200. So it's all these different things that impact our lives. You said earlier, Michael. I got to keep saying happy birthday to you because I appreciate you being here with me, my friend. You said earlier you had a different career besides the one that you had now. What was that, and how did you even get into that?
So my first career, I was in consulting, right? Business consulting. So there was a kind of a tax element to it. There was a real estate element to it. And I worked with companies in a consulting firm to help them sort of locate their businesses, right? Like if you have a big company has an operation, they want to put manufacturing somewhere, they want to put a headquarters somewhere, that kind of thing. That was what I did. And it was interesting. I got to travel. I met a lot of really interesting people, governors and things like that. And it was a fairly, I wouldn't say it was like super high profile, but it was a pretty good career. And I got into it. I stumbled into it. I thought I wanted to work in government when I got out of graduate school in 1999. And I learned that I couldn't pay my student loans off. So I was like, I got to get something that pays a bit more. So this job was sort of like, oh, okay. Like I can work with companies who interface with the government, which was part of it. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I just sort of stumbled into it, started my career in 1999. And then I was in that field for 19 years, until I formally stepped out and moved into my next phase of life. But there was like a 5-year kind of window where I was starting to question, like, is this really the work that I want to do for the rest of my life? And it was sort of a process to go from here I am making a really good living in a career that I had been in for a long time to, hey, I'm going to leave that behind. And now I'm going to move into this new venture, this new coaching career that would basically put me back, at square one. So that was really challenging with a family and all these other things, but it just felt like that was the thing that I needed to do. It was the right decision for me.
Yeah. So earlier you talked, and you just said family, right? And it triggered something for me. You talked earlier that you were talking to somebody and you told them about the kids, and they said, how many kids do you have?
Yeah.
Right. So when, what was, because a lot of people, and it happens everywhere. Some people plan to have a child. Other people are surprised by the child.
Sure.
For me, I planned, right? For me, it was, I was a little bit crazy because, I'm number 10 of 12.
Wow.
I'm the first one born in the hospital. And then, so I wanted my own family, but for me, I wanted another 12 too, right? Like my parents. But I was not that fortunate. So when I had gotten married, and I said to her, we're going to plan our honeymoon based on your menstrual cycle. She thought I was nuts. And guess what? Our honeymoon was based around her. Because I even said to the agent that was helping us, I said, it can't be on these days. It has to be on this day, this day. And then we got pregnant. We got pregnant. It worked out. And my son is now 24 years old, and he's a beautiful kid. And, I have another one who's about to be 21. And it's a thrill that we can plan these things. Tell me about your experience, and how many kids do you have?
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I always wanted to be a father too. So I would say it was absolutely planned, very similar to you, not on the honeymoon, but, I would say, within 6 months of being married, we were pregnant, and my first was born in 2008. So he's going to be 17 in October.
Nice.
And my baby girl, who is, just my favorite person in the world. I hope my son's not listening. I'm sure he's not. He's in school. Is she's going to be 15 in September. So yeah, my two kids are, I always wanted them. I always wanted to be a father. It's kind of interesting because I have a sibling who is a little bit younger than me, and she was the exact opposite. She never really wanted to be a parent, and I mean, I always respected that.
Right.
But it's interesting because we came from the same household, and I could easily have sort of seen, like, I could have said to myself, like, growing up this way, like, I probably wouldn't want to be a father. But for whatever reason, for me, it just always was something that I wanted. And for whatever reason, and it sounds like you work with a lot of children. Like, I love kids. Kids are innocent. They're curious. They're playful. Like, you don't get any BS with kids, right? You get the genuine article.
Oh yeah.
Whereas with adults are very, very guarded. And like, for me, working with young people is like, you getting the real thing. And that always gave me exhilaration. And it's the same way with my own children. The conversations, the connection, the relationships are really genuine. I mean, they're challenging, obviously, at times. As a parent, you still have to be a parent, right? They're not just your friends. You have to be disciplined, and you have to give them structure and guidance and all those things. But those relationships are really, really the most genuine relationships I have in my life. So I just value them so much.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. You did say one thing, and you said, I hope my son is not watching, but let me ask you a question. When he was born, were you overjoyed?
Oh my God. I was through the moon.
Okay.
Totally.
That doesn't mean you don't love him. So if he does listen to the replay, I want him to know that you still love him so much.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
The relationship is just different between you and your son and you and your daughter.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe, I'm going to tell you why, because my youngest son blamed me for loving my older one. So Giovanni is my younger one. Marco's my older one. And Marco was always well behaved, all this, and Giovanni was the terror, right? Terrible twos and the whole thing, and in trouble. And he thought I love my other son more. And I said, no, I love him differently, but I love you the same. Here's the thing. You trigger me more than he triggers me. But I said, there is no way. I said I would put my life in front of anything that was going to take yours. So don't think I wouldn't do that for him.
Yes.
But I also would do it for you. And that kind of helped them understand it. Of course, I didn't just say it one time. I had to say it multiple of times.
Yeah.
And now he understands that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's that connection that we make. My connection with both my sons is totally different. But that doesn't mean I don't love them equally. It's just that one maybe is easier to.
Yeah.
Right.
And we joke about that thing. My daughter is much more, she's different. The personalities are different. She's a different kind of person than he is. He's more stoic. She's more emotional. Right. And so, like, to credit my son too, he understands that. He doesn't take it, which I love about him. He doesn't take it personally, as far as I know. He doesn't blame me. We have a good relationship. He sees, like, underneath the surface of it, and we talk about it openly. I think I think that is probably the biggest difference between my childhood and their childhood, which is, hey, we could talk about stuff. Yeah. It's not like we're trying to hide things, or I'm trying to pull a gotcha. You tell me something and I'm going to use it against you, or I'm going to punish you. No, like, I want to understand what you're going through. Now, if you do something that I think that you need to do differently, I'm going to tell you about it. Right. Yeah. But I try to view it as their life is their life, not my life. I'm here to guide that life and help them because I've been there before, but they've got to make their own choices. They've got to make their own mistakes. And when they do, I'm there to pick them up and help them. But I'm also not there to, like, flog them, browbeat them because they did something that I didn't want them to do. Not the easiest thing in the world to do when they're your kids, right? But at the same time, like being aware of that for me, like I learned that from my own experience growing up. I wanted to be a different type of parent. And to me, it's being a parent is the most important job that I have. It's the most important part of who I am.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. What are your kids' names, by the way?
My son's name is Patrick. Patrick is named after my uncle, my mother's brother, and my daughter is Lucy, and she's named after my ex-wife's grandmother. So we try to give them meaningful names.
That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Thank you for talking about your kids and the way you parent, because I always say that somebody who works with young kids like you do, or anybody, an athlete or whatever, and you said it earlier, they kind of become like your own kids. You kind of take that fatherly, or if you're a lady, motherly connotation to them. You that connection that they can tell you anything, that you're not going to judge them, because when we judge somebody, who are we anyway to judge anybody, right?
Yeah.
And even to be honest with you, even in the court of law, judges are not judging a person, they're judging the actions of the person. They're not judging. So everybody listen, I'm not telling you what judges do, but to me, they're judging the actions they took, not the person, right? Because people change. Like my friend who went to jail and he changed. The judge judged him because of his actions. He went to jail. He was fortunate enough that it wasn't such a big crime that he was stuck in there. And he told me in confidence it should have been more, but he got lucky. So he got lucky twice, that he didn't get convicted for longer, but that there was somebody there who didn't say, hey, this is the life. We got to do it. When you get out, do this for me. That guy was not that. So he was fortunate that the guy helped him out. And anybody who works with kids has understood that I want better for you. And I love that you do that. So I want to turn this table around a little bit and talk about what your second career is. And I know you said in the beginning it wasn't, because you have to take care of your family. But what is it, and how has it really enriched your life?
So my second career is in the field of sports psychology. So I'm a mental performance coach, right? Helping young athletes with the mental side of whatever it is that they do, typically sport. Um, and it was very intentional for me to get into that field. I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do in my second active life. But I knew I wanted to do something in sports, and I always had the affinity of coaching young people. I did that as a parent, and that was part of my inspiration, like coaching kids as a volunteer. I feel like I could make an impact. And I think the most enriching part of it is sort of what you said, which is that idea of being that person in a young man or woman's life who they do trust outside of the normal like family structure. They can talk to me. They can be honest. That they don't have to censor themselves. And the things that I've learned in doing this over 5 years with young people, particularly teenagers, is it's very I don't say they feel uncomfortable, but it's very odd for them. A lot of them, when I ask them questions and I don't judge the answers, right? They're not used to that. Or when I ask them questions, period, they're not always used to adults asking them questions like, what do you think? How do you think about this? What do you want? Right. They're not used to people inquiring with them about what they think or feel or what they want for themselves. It's very, I want to say it's confusing, but it's definitely different. And I love taking on that role where young people can share those things with me, feel comfortable. And then I could take that information and say, hey, okay, now I know about you. You let me in. Now I'm going to try to help you go accomplish what you want to accomplish. And to me, that is extremely rewarding. I love that. That's in essence, in a nutshell, why I do what I do.
I love it. I love what you do. I'll share with you. I also work with autistic kids
Mm-hmm.
at all ages, but I currently I do one-on-one sessions with a young man
Mm-hmm.
who's 24 and he's autistic. But in the beginning, because I needed to set up his structure, I I would tell him exactly what to do. I would show him how to do it and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he's been with me, gosh, going on 3 years, twice a
Wow.
week, he's with me for 45 minutes, just me and him. And his mother's like, he's gonna be an old man. You'll have him forever. I'm like, thank you. I said, but I love your son too, because yeah, what bothers me about anybody with autism is the fact that they're not fully always there, but then there's
Mm-hmm.
different levels, right?
Right.
Different levels of autism. Because I've had kids who I've coached or trained kids who hit themselves, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, my God, if I hit myself that hard every day, my God, what am I doing to us? But to them, it's just part of who they are.
Right.
And I've gotten a kid who used to hit himself to stop. I got this kid to do jump rope. I got this kid to do speed bag. I got this kid to, and his dad's like, how are you doing all this with him?
Mm-hmm.
So I took him from when he was, I think, 12 all the way to 18, right? And his dad is like, wow. Unfortunately, they moved away, but his dad's
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, incredible. Thank you. And so this particular kid that I have now, who's 24,
Mm-hmm.
I now give him three choices. I said, "Do you want to do this, or that?" And he looks at me and he goes, I'm going to pick the easiest one." I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's the first thing you're going to do, but you're still going to do the other two." So
Right.
I gave you a choice, correct, but you still have to do the work involved. So then he laughs at me. So,
Yeah.
but I love the fact that you ask questions of your athletes, because the importance is when we ask a question, we allow them to actually think. And usually, sometimes I'll say to them, I'm going to ask you a question. Don't answer me. They're like, don't answer you? I said, I want you to think about it. And then when you fully processed it, then give me the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're like, but I have the answer. I said, I know, I don't want to hear it yet. And they look at me, they're a little bit baffled. Why do you do that, Sifu? And I'm like, because I wanted to ferment. And I want you to give me your best answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times it's really interesting because I know their first answer is on impulse, right? But when they can really think about it, and then they'll come more eloquently and they'll be able to give me a better answer.
Yeah.
Answer that makes more sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what I wanted to hear. Right. Because I always say, I don't want to hear,
Yes.
I don't want you to tell me what I want to hear, because that's nonsense. I don't want that.
Right. Right. And I think I love that you said that. That helps me, right? Because I think one of the things that I can struggle with as a coach is being comfortable with silence, right? Letting them think about what they want to say and just being still and silent and letting them be comfortable with in silence with their thoughts and thinking about it, right? I think that's great, right? Like, because they aren't challenged to think about things a lot of the time. And that's something like, if you asked me what the biggest benefit of the work that I do for young people is, my opinion is that I help them gain a different perspective or gain perspective on what they do.
Mm.
Because we all know, right, when something is important to us, right, and it could be you or me, when something is important to us, like our business or our family or whatever, sometimes we get tunnel vision and we can only see it through that lens of, hey, this has got to work out, or I got to do it this way, or, all this stuff. And then when we step back and look at it from a little bit more, with a little bit more objectivity from afar, we go, oh, I didn't see that there was another one or two or three ways to look at it. And now that perspective allows us to sort of take a breath and go, okay, there's different options. It doesn't have to be just the way I imagined it to be in my mind because I've created this picture. right? And like, I loved kids to be able to do that and say, oh yeah, you know what? I was able to think about it differently. And I was able to alleviate some of my performance anxiety or some of my overthinking because I could see it differently. I could see both sides of it, which I think is just a wonderful skill for anybody to have, right? To be able to go look at things and go, hey, it's not all the thing that I imagined it to be, but there's different ways to look at it. And I could choose my answer. I can choose the way I respond versus, oh, I feel like emotionally I need to respond this way immediately. And it's just this reaction versus, hey, let me measure my thinking and what I'm about to say here.
Yeah, love it, love it. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I want you to remember all day it's your birthday. When you decided that this is the field you wanted to get into, what was the catalyst for that?
I think a big part of it was my recovery. The idea that there were people who were of service to me, to help me, inspired me. Because I never really, I never noticed it. I'm sure I had seen it, but I never really like internalized it. Like, these people are really going out of their way to help me. And I just love that idea. Like, I want to be that person to other people as a career. Right. I think some of it was my experience as a parent and as a youth sport coach was part of it. Hey, I'm seeing these things in the environment and experiencing these things that make me feel a certain way. And I felt like I could be of service by influencing that environment. I'm very much an inside out kind of guy, meaning like, I think some people try to change things over the top and try to change the system. Maybe I'm cynical. Maybe I'm very much a micro level guy. Hey, if I could change one person's life, or I could change one little thing that then grows from the inside out, that's the way I approach it. That's why I love one-on-one coaching, building a relationship with somebody, giving them the tools, seeing them change. And then that usually helps change the environment around them versus I got to change everything. And then that's really hard to do.
Yeah. I love the fact of changing their environment, the ideas, their thoughts, the way they see themselves. Because so many young people don't fully see who they are or who they can become.
Yes.
Michael, when you start working with a new client, what is some of the first things that you do to help guide them?
Well, I think the first thing that I do kind of ties to what you were just saying, which is it's about understanding them, right? So it becomes it's an intake process. It's an interview, right? I want to know about them. Why are you here? Where do you come from? What do you do? What do you like? One of the questions that I like to ask athletes when I first start getting to know them is, tell me about your strengths, which is a very baffling question, believe it or not, for a lot of young people. And I think it speaks to what you were saying. They don't really fully understand themselves. They know their deficiencies really, really well. I'm not good at this because everybody tells me, and I beat myself up. But what are you good at? And like really getting them to think about themselves and share that. Right. And it's not only the information, but it's really just challenging them to open up and be vulnerable and talk to somebody else about the realities of their situation. And I think that helps develop the buy-in, right? And then you get the buy-in and then you start asking them to do some things. Like you said, well, what do you do with them? I'm very big on building awareness, right? What do we control? What don't we control? Building awareness of our breath. Hey, what's your breathing like? Do you notice your breathing? How do you use it? Oh, I don't. Okay. Now we know we can use it for a lot of specific reasons that are really helpful in performance and outside of it, right? How do you kind of reconnect yourself to the present moment, which is a big thing for me, mindfulness. Oh, I've never really thought about that. Like I'm always thinking about all these other things versus, hey, how do I ground myself back in the present moment? To me, building self-awareness, understanding how to bring yourself back to the present moment, that helps address a lot of problems because now things slow down. We're under control. We understand ourselves better. We understand what we react to. We understand our environment, what we can't control. Now we start to help them develop choices in the moment of like, oh, normally I would have, a fit, or I would have an outburst, or I would really get down on myself, versus, hey, I see myself going down that road, but now I can make a choice to think about something different or do something different. That's where I start. And then beyond that, then we start to layer in new things. But without that foundation, like of the awareness, it's really hard. Now you're trying to like pile stuff on top where the kid who's not aware or present to the moment, now you're actually making it maybe more stressful for them.
Yeah. So how do you handle a kid who is naturally talented, doesn't want to do the full work like everybody else, doesn't think they need to? Because we all know that talent is great, but work over overkills talent every time. It takes over, right? When somebody works really hard, because I can have two athletes, one works really hard and the other one is just talented, doesn't feel like they have to do their due diligence, and then they get surpassed by work. So how do you handle somebody like that?
It's interesting. I don't see that very commonly. I think a lot of the athletes that come to me are actually very generally hard workers, at least in their performance environment.
Got it.
I think the thing that they struggle with me is the willingness to do the mental work the same way they do the physical work.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. They're not able to say like, oh, I'm working really hard at my craft, whatever that is. And I'm lifting weights and I'm going into training and I'm playing and I'm practicing all year round and I'm doing all these things, but I'm not getting better. And they don't embrace the idea that it's not the physical stuff, it's the mental stuff that has to get better to unlock the physical. However, to answer your question, if and when I have an athlete who is not motivated to do the work, it's really tapping into why. Why are you doing this? Right? Like if you're really gifted at this and you want to be good at it, but you're not willing to do the work, what's the point? What's your motivation? What's your purpose? And trying to understand that and who they are. Because listen, in rare instances, I've had athletes, certainly not at my suggestion, but on their own, decide that they're not motivated enough to continue. And they go, I'm doing this and I've been doing this for a long time, but I realized that it's not that important to me. I would rather focus on my studies and become a doctor. I'd rather do something else that's important to me. And I was just doing this because I felt like I was supposed to, or because it was a habit, because my parents wanted me to. And honestly, as a coach, I don't care if they want that for themselves and they decide for themselves that, hey, this thing that I'm doing is not serving me anymore. And there's a different purpose and a higher purpose in my life that I can achieve by like exiting my sport. Then I'm proud to have been a part of that too. And that's where the awareness comes from about who they are as people and what they want. I don't encourage that. I want them to keep going. I want them to be great. But if they want something else, I can't manufacture that motivation for them, but I can help them think about it differently and say, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to move on. And that makes me happy too, if they're happy.
I love that. I love that. Because most people will say, you can do it. Just keep going. You're having a dry spell or this or that. When that's a coach who just is under their own agenda, if you will, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How many coaches are out there who are under their own agenda and they just want to win, right? The W.
Yeah. And in fairness to coaches, and this is something that I'm very adamant about talking to athletes about, is empathy, right? See it from your coach's perspective. One, depending at the level you're at, especially if you're high school and certainly college, these coaches are being paid to produce performance. So there's an element to that. That's right. Their job. And they have families to feed. But further, if you dig a little deeper to your example, they might not even realize that perspective of like win at all costs is a bad thing. That might be the way that they were taught by their coach, by their father, by someone in their lives. And they don't think it's bad. They believe it to be true deep down in their heart. And maybe they're not even wrong, but they're not willing to change. And you're in that environment as an athlete, you've also got to learn how to adapt to that. If you're in that environment and that's the way your coach thinks, My job is to help you think about it differently and find strategies to be able to go, this is not personal. This is not the coach doesn't like me. This is not like, whatever. This is, hey, I'm in this environment. I can't control my coach. This is the way he thinks for a reason. And unless I want to feel sorry for myself, I can then find a way to adapt to that. Right. Or I can exit, and that's okay too. That's okay too. But to your earlier point about like really being introspective about an answer to a question, the same thing has to apply. Do I really want to be here? Do I really want to do this? And if you can look inside and go, no, I want to leave, then that's what you should do. But if you're leaving for the wrong reasons and you're just trying to get away from something, then you have to look at that too very closely and go, am I just trying to get away from the bad feeling? Or do I have the resilience and do I have the desire and motivation to stay and work through this? That's also something that I would absolutely do with any client. And it happens quite a bit.
Mm. Absolutely. Michael, some great insights, my friend. Oh, my God. I feel so connected with you because it's your birthday, I think. But we have the same kind of ideas, concepts when we work with young people. But I actually use the same concepts with adults.
Yes.
Right. Full adults. I mean, I have a client who's just turned 67, and he's like a kid. He's like a kid. And I compliment him, and he doesn't take the compliment, right? And so this particular client, I'm like, you're really good. I said, I wish I had more clients like you. And he goes, oh, I'm not good. And so he still has doubts, no matter how much, I said, look at what you've accomplished. You're number 3 in your sales force. We're talking about thousands of people. He's number 3 in the company.
Wow.
Yeah. So he says, yeah, the money, the this, the that. He goes, but I feel like I'm not getting, so I can't even retire. And I said, why can't you retire? He goes, because I have to work. I said, well, that's okay. I said, because if you look at me, I'm never retiring. I said, for me, that means I'm going to stop caring about people.
Yeah.
To me, my job is to care. That's what my real job is, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's so interesting. And I feel exactly the same way about my work. The idea of retirement, like getting away from work, is just not something that has any appeal to me at this point in my life. But I think it's interesting, right? Like I think we all, I don't want to generalize, but like I even struggle with what that man said about I've got to earn, I got to make money. That's the way a lot of us are brought up. And it's really hard to break away from those beliefs because it's always been there, not only in growing up and family, but it's also in the world that we live in. We marry spouses and we have friends and we have people around us who are saying those things all the time. And it's really hard to go, you know what? I'm going to disavow myself of that belief. Right. And that was actually one of the things I really struggled with when I made a career change. I was making really not life-changing money, but really good income. Right. That was really comfortable and nice. And, that idea of like, am I crazy to give this up to start over and start a business and start from scratch and not earn nearly as much as I was earning then? It took a lot of courage for me to do that because I always had that voice in my head. Like, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to make as much money. You're not going to be able to blah, blah, blah. But like the pull of the service and caring and doing that thing I loved, I was like, I cannot miss out on this opportunity. Now's the time to do it. And if it doesn't work, figure it out. But like, I would regret if I didn't do it. And I don't regret any of it. It's hard, but there's no regret whatsoever.
Love it. Love it. Michael, my gosh, thank you for being here on your birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it.
So thank you for all the incredible insights you've given us today. I'll give you 30 to 45 seconds. Tell us how people can reach you. Your website is going across the bottom. And then let's get some people connected to you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, my website's the best way to get me. You can communicate through the website. You can find free resources. You can find podcasts and blogs that I have, all sorts of different stuff. But most importantly, you can reach out and just check me out. And then if you're on social media, Michael V. Huber on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, Michael V. Huber. So I'm all over the place. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to connect with people, even if it's just for a conversation, to learn more or learn more about you, or just have a chat. So don't feel free to reach out. I always look forward to hearing from people, regardless of intent.
Yeah, absolutely. And reach out on his socials and wish him a happy birthday, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's do it, right?
Yeah.
Michael, thank you again for just being you.
Thank you. Same to you. This is wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for taking care of my future with the kids that you're empowering. Yeah,
Thank you. I'll be sure to look at that way for myself going forward.
That's it. There you go. Do me a favor, hang on for a minute. Everybody have a great and incredible rest of your day. Be blessed. But here's the thing, share this show. And if possible, share it with parents of kids who need to understand that our kids are our future and you are part of it as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed day.